pleasure to introduce the newest member of the Shoot Pro Wrestling broadcast team. This man went from the amateur wrestling mats in Pennsylvania to the hottest feud in WWF history, to the AWA World Championship, to saving WCW from the NWO, to the broadcast booth as the golden voice of WCW and TNA Wrestling. It is our pleasure to introduce the newest member of the Shoot Pro Wrestling broadcast team, the living legend, Larry Zbyszko.
Well, thank you very much, Matt. Am I on voice now?
Yeah. You're live.
Okay. Well, thank you for the introduction. I mean, I've had a very great, lucky career, and from the times I met Bruno, who was my mentor when I was 16, and through my travels, I met the old school shooters like guys from Wigan, England, John Foley, names you never heard of probably, but they knew how to break your arm, break your neck, pop your knee out. I mean, professional wrestling in terms of shoot wrestling is an amazing sport. And it's a sport with a history of thousands of years. It goes back to a popular sport for the ancient Egyptians and then to the Roman Empire. And it was the Romans who turned wrestling into a very brutal, physically devastating, break your arm, pop your elbow out, break your knee, break your neck. The Romans turned it into a very deadly sport. And it's been carried on, now for years and years. And I'm always been a big fan of wrestling, but when it comes to the purity and the science and the anatomy of the human body, because the human body, if you know how to hook it, that's what puts the holds on and can the sleeper. The Romans used to put people asleep, but they didn't wake up.
That's
but I'm
brilliant.
really proud to be here.
Well, thank you so much, Larry, and thank you so much, Matt, King of Connecticut. We're super stoked to have you on board Shoot Pro. Matt did such a great intro. And what I love, you talked about your mentor, Bruno Sammartino, and then you dropped another name that my mentor, Billy Robinson, used to talk about. You're the only other person I've ever heard mention this name, John Foley.
Oh God, yeah. When I first started in '73, I started around the local Pittsburgh little territory, and Bruno was training me. But Bruno sent me out to Vancouver, British Columbia, and Gene Kaninsky was running it, and he wanted me to get experience so he could bring me back in some months and introduce me as Bruno's protege. And when I got there, I even changed my name and wrestled under a different name, Larry Whistler, and not Zbyszko. And John Foley was kind of a little older guy, and not a big guy. He didn't look scary at all, but he was a guy from Wigan, England, older guy, didn't have any money, didn't have a car. So I used to do him a favor and have him ride with me. I wouldn't charge him any trans or anything, helped him out. And what we used to do is he'd say, well, let's go to the arena early before any of the wrestlers and a lot of people got there. And we go to the arenas early and go in the ring. And John would show me all the hooks of the shooters and how to put them on and how to break an arm and break a neck and break a elbow, pop a shoulder out. I mean, true submission wrestling is the toughest one-on-one sport, and a true professional wrestler, a shooter, can beat anybody. I don't care if you're a boxer, a karate man, a UFC guy with the punching and kicking. A true shooter will win every time.
Yeah,
And
we
so,
agree. That's why we're really trying to get this platform going to create shoot pro wrestling, like a whole no works, pure shooters. So I'm just again really thrilled, and thanks for sharing that about John Foley. He was one heck of a tough old Wiganer. Now,
yeah, he didn't
you were
look like it. I mean, but boy, he could break arm, and he showed me some things and how to do this. And I broke one guy's leg, and I felt bad, so I never really hurt anybody again. But in the old days, they didn't want you in the business. They wanted you buying tickets, or we didn't eat. So if there was a guy bugging a promoter to get, give me a match, give me a match, I want to be a wrestler, the promoter would go to one of the guys who knew how to shoot and say, "Will you just get rid of this guy?" So I went, okay. And Leo Garibaldi was a promoter for the LaBelles years ago in California. Some guy was bugging him. So I said, okay, I'll get rid of him. So I went in the ring and I'm looking across the ring, and this guy is like 6'6", 280 pounds, looked great. And I'm going, oh my God. And I didn't want to waste any time. So what I did was, and this is an interesting point I'm going to use a lot, the human game of chess, because I'd make it look like I was, going with my hands up. As soon as he lifted his hands, I leg dived him, but I put my hand behind his ankle and drove my shoulder into his knee. And I could hear the pop. The guy went down like a big tree, and I popped his knee out. It only takes 15 pounds of pressure to pop a knee out. And but then they'd go back to the neighborhood, and all the guys would say, "What happened?" He goes, "Boy, that wrestling guys, don't mess with them. They're really tough. They broke my leg." So it would be good for business. The tough
Yeah,
business.
there's so many stories about you, Larry, in the business. And Randy Rhodes told me a story when we were in Daytona. I was with Dan Severn at the Fan Fest about you stretching this guy because he kept saying he wasn't ready yet.
Yeah,
Do you remember that?
yeah. That was a guy I think was in the AWA, and according to the time of the match, I told the referee, "Okay, let's go. It's time to go home." And then the young guy told the referee, "No, I'm not ready yet." So I went, he's not ready yet. So I stretched the hell out of him. And that was in front of Paul E. Paul E. Heyman was managing him. It's just starting out. That became a private joke. I'm not ready now. Well, he became ready. But you had to have a respect for the older wrestlers. And the one thing about wrestling is not only is it really a pure sport, but it's also not just moves and holds and locks and chokes, but it's that mental. You get two guys who are both super tough. It boils down to what I call the human game of chess. How you going to outsmart the other guy? And nowadays, not like my day, but nowadays, the wrestlers and competitors have an advantage because with YouTube and face plant and Instagram and all that stuff I don't do, but you can watch an opponent and study them. And if some guy likes to come in high, you can set him up and come in low and take him down. Or some guy likes to leg dive you, you're ready to front face lock him. So you can study your opponents nowadays, where years ago you really couldn't study them. There was no YouTubes and no, tweeting and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you could you can't scout back in the day because another one of my mentors, besides Billy Robinson, is a gentleman out of Clarion named Wade Chalice, and he's a very good folk style wrestler. But anyway, he would tell me like, yeah, I'd have to see which side the cauliflower was on because that would tell me which side they'd shoot and hit the ear against the hip,
Yeah.
or where the rub on the shoe was from when they would do their drop step. That would be the only way you could scout
Yeah.
the way a guy would operate back then.
I got cauliflower ears, not too much to right. The left side's kind of cauliflower, kind of good. But the old timers had ears like boom. I mean, it was brutal. It's a brutal sport, and it's really a scientific kind of sport if you look at it for what it is, because the human anatomy comes into play like a wrist lock. If you put a hold on someone, you don't grab your fingers like this because they can pull apart. You put two fingers right on their wrist or your wrist and lock to hold them because your hand bone
Yeah.
spreads out like a Y. And
That's
just
exactly how Billy Wicks taught me.
yeah,
Because you
just
also neutralize the forearm muscles that way
yeah,
too.
just two fingers around the wrist, and you can't break the lock because your hand bone stops it. You have to know all these things. It's really an intricate sport of scientific knowledge of the human anatomy. And again, what I love to say is the human game of chess, because two tough guys, who's going to be the smartest to win?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love
Now,
that.
Larry, you've had a chance to check out a little bit of the action from Shoot Pro, and we are so excited that you're going to be joining us in the broadcast booth, because I've said this to you and to Jake, of all the wrestlers that went from the ring to the broadcast booth. You were so smooth in the ring. You had a great amateur background, and then learned from John Foley the hooks and stuff. And you were so smooth in the ring, but you were also so smooth and are so smooth on the mic. So we're super excited about having you call the action with us.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And being able to do a good interview, I was blessed with the gift of gab. But doing a good interview was something, if you knew what you were doing, would reach the emotions of the fans. I mean, even in the mid 1980s, things were changing a little bit and the dirt sheets were coming out and this and that. But I'd stand in the ring for 5 minutes, 10 minutes or more, and the crowd was chanting, Larry sucks. Larry sucks. I think Meltzer called it, I was stalling, but it wasn't stalling. The crowd was going nuts, chanting Larry sucks, because the psychology I learned from the old school was that people believed in real life that I was a true asshole. They believed, no matter what wrestling they believed in, they believed I was a real a-hole. And that's how I got them. So interviews is an important part. Today they talk too long. I don't want to see some guy in a suit standing there for 10, 15 minutes talking about something, and they used to be friends and great. Start a match. You know?
Yeah, and not
Yeah,
only that, we're really trying to start like a real match, right? Like
Yeah.
an actual shoot. Now you mentioned the promoters out west, the LaBelles. So did you know Gene's mom, Eileen Eaton?
I might have met her once. I think LaBelle's brother was Mike LaBelle, maybe. If
Yeah,
I
yeah.
that's right. Yep.
I knew Gene kind of good because he was into jujitsu, and Gene's big dream was to ride a motorcycle through the arena, go up a ramp, jump over the ring on his motorcycle, and land on a down ramp and go out. But Mike would never let him. And Gene did a lot of stunt spots in movies.
Yeah.
And Gene was there when I broke the guy's leg, and he was really proud of me. He was a character. He was a tough guy. Gene LaBelle was a tough guy.
Yeah, definitely a shooter. Some of the other shooters, though, we were talking, on another phone call about Billy Robinson.
Yeah. Well, Billy was another Wigan guy, and Billy was tough. The only kind of thing that messed him up sometimes was he was kind of a big drinker. And
Oh,
there
dude,
was,
that messed him up late in his life
yeah,
when his wife and he divorced, man. I mean, he drank way too much and I mean almost
yeah,
killed him.
yeah, it almost killed him, and he'd get in fights and bars. I never drank. I mean, thank God, I never drank alcohol in my adult life.
Well,
I never got into drugs, never did the steroid thing. But I'll tell you one quickie. Billy Robinson was in some little bar after the show, some club, and Peter Maivia, The Rock's grandfather, was in there. And Maivia wasn't a shooter or a really submission wrestler or anything, but he was like a gorilla. We used to call him Tiger Shark, me and Chavo Guerrero, because when he smiled, he was wall to wall, big teeth. And what happened was Billy was drunk, the chief was half schnockered. They got in an argument. They both jumped up. Me and Chavo were looking over, and Billy kind of bear hugged Maivia, threw him down, hip tossed him, threw him down on his back on the ground. And Maivia had his arms around Billy. But then all of a sudden, a few seconds later, Billy Graham is screaming, "Get him off me, get him off me," because Maivia was eating him through his T-shirt. I mean, there was blood all over the place, chunks of skin hanging out. Maivia wasn't a wrestler, but he just started eating you. It was like, oh my God.
Yeah, that's the same way Billy tells the story, that he had underhooks and he had suplexed him, and then Maeva bit him right in the face.
Start eating them.
Yeah.
So,
Unreal.
I rarely went to bars because I knew there'd be a fight or some fan would make a comment about some wrestler. Oh, you suck. Well, there'll be another fight. And so I didn't drink, so I didn't go.
You know,
Well,
I do
in
have to
Shoot
ask
Pro,
you-
in Shoot Pro, we will not have biting. We'll have pretty much every other
No biting.
will not be barred, but there will be no biting allowed.
Well, you know
I
what?
do have to.
The idea of Shoot Pro really excites me because I think people will get into it and realize that it is an art. It is a science, and to be a shooter, I mean, you've got to know the anatomy, you've got to know the psychology, and there's nothing like it really on TV. I mean, the mixed martial arts, or UCF, UFC, whatever it is, with the punching and the kicking. I mean, someone might be good, but then get a lucky punch and lose. But this is really a pure scientific. I mean, it's an art to be a shooter, and a top-notch wrestling shooter will beat any boxer. Even though they have the best hands, they won't box them. They'll take them down. Or a karate man. Jiu-jitsu is some kind of wrestling takedowns with some hooks, but not to the extensive knowledge of how to break every bone in your body, So I'm looking forward to it. And I think once the people see it and realize, oh my God, look what these guys can do. They can put you in the ER in 30 seconds. It's going to be an interesting show. And it's never been on TV. It's never been on. I think you guys got something great cooking. And I'm excited to be a part of it.
Awesome. We're so excited to have you, Larry. And you were mentioned that you're not a drinker, but there was one story that you told on our mutual friend Jerry Briscoe's show that I found hilarious. That did involve drinking. When you were wrestling for Penn State and you knocked out the assistant dean.
Yeah, I went to Penn State on a wrestling scholarship. When I was a freshman, we were on some campus. Me and my buddy from the same high school were sharing a dorm room. And you could go from Pennsylvania across the border to New York and buy a bottle of whiskey. And I think what I got was either cherry vodka or strawberry vodka, and I never drank. So we went back and we drank some and got half looped. And at the same time, right down the hill was a dance event going on with the college freshmen, like a party, So me and my buddy go down to the party, and we're trying to get in. There's a line, and some guy says, "I don't know if you can come in here because you're drunk." I said, "We're not drunk." So me and my buddy go into a men's room, which we thought, but it was a ladies' room. And on the wall, we see a Kotex machine. So what do? We kick the Kotex machine off the wall. and money falls out. So we go, oh, so we go to other women's rooms, kick the Kotex machines off and get the money. And one had a woman in it, a young girl, ran out terrified. Oh my God, there's drunks in there beating up the Kotex machines. So we went back in line, half schnockered, and all of a sudden there's a rhubarb, and some guy grabs me by the shoulder, turns me around, and just out of a reflex, I punched him. Boom! And down he goes. And it turned out that it was the assistant dean of the college in a raincoat because he got called to come into the campus because he lived there because there was a disturbance. So I knocked out the assistant dean and was let go from the team. But
That's an awesome story.
after that, I hugged the toilet all night long, puking and puking. I got the dry heaves. I never felt so horrible in my life. I don't know how people can drink, but alcohol's legal. Yeah, I mean, I don't get it. I think it's, a little wine, a little champagne, that. But the hard stuff, it really makes people stupid. And you can ruin your life. DUI, 10 grand. You get in a car wreck and kill somebody drunk. That's considered murder.
Oh yeah, it just happened to Sunny, in wrestling. She's in prison for
Oh,
murder. Yeah, so I don't want to dive too much in that, but
yeah.
on that note, one of my favorites of all time was the Captain. I told you some funny stories my dad had about him in the grocery store because we grew up right on Long Island Sound, and he used to like his booze too. Old Captain Lou Albano.
Captain Lou was, he was basically borderline insane. And Tony Altimore, because they used to be a tag team, the Sicilians, and they stopped that. Lou went into managing. But Tony Altimore still knew how to, work the captain. And one time, Tony and Captain Lou were in some high class restaurant in New York, and there was a couple sitting at a table close by, all dressed up, having a nice, expensive New York dinner. And Albano's listening to Altimore, and he's telling, "Hey, this guy was making fun of you, Luce. This guy says that you're a horrible manager." And Lou Albano gets all mad, and he gets up. He walks over to the table in this exclusive restaurant, unzips his pants, and starts pissing on the guy and the girl eating dinner in the restaurant.
He was a wild man.
Kidding me?
He was Phil Baroni's uncle or great uncle from his father's side. He's Phil's grandfather's brother, and Phil had a lot of crazy stories about the Captain too.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I had to ask you that. But yeah, I'll turn it back to Jake to kind of close it out on Shoot Pro because we're so psyched to have you joining the
Yeah, I can't
broadcast.
wait to get into this. And there's no doubt in my mind, once sports fans, not just wrestling fans, but fans of any sport, once they see what it is and get into it, they're going to love it because it's different. It's legitimate. I mean, just like any other sport, people are going to start betting on it. I'll bet on this guy. I don't know this guy. And
That's
again, it
exactly
boils
what we're
down to
trying to do.
yeah,
That's
the
exactly
winners.
it.
Yeah, the winners will wrestle the winners, and then it boils back down to that human game of chess. Okay, you're both tough. Who's the smartest?
I love it. Boy, I couldn't say it better. Larry, so blessed to have you on board. Super excited to turn a whole new generation onto the living legend Larry Zbyszko. Matt, thank you so much. And Larry, thank you so much.
Thank
Guys,
you.
everybody watching this, man, stay tuned. We got big things coming.
Awesome. Thank you.